go. Okay, I think we're awkwardly live now. Pretty
Yay.
sure. Pretty sure that's a thing. Hey, if you can see and hear us, please give us a thumbs up in the chat. That's going to help. That's going to help
Oh,
us understand what's going on because the delay and all that junk live streaming. You know what I'm saying? Hey, Daria, how you doing?
hey Casey, I'm doing very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm so good. I'm so glad to be here. So glad to be hanging out with you. So it's
Nice.
always great to hang out and collaborate on stuff, and ah, it's just it's cool. So hey, if nobody knows you, which I think probably most people that are tuning in for something like this, I know who you are. But if anybody doesn't, would you give us a little intro to who you are, what you do, and what you're about?
Wow, sure, yeah. So this goes all the way back to 19. No, actually, I'll just summarize.
I was born as a baby, and
I'm Daria Fissoun. Hello, everyone, and I am a colorist and a compositor. I primarily use DaVinci Resolve, so that would be the color page in Fusion. And I also train others on DaVinci Resolve. So in fact, I develop training materials for Blackmagic Design. If you go to their training webpage, then the colorist guide, that was me, I wrote that, and
so
developed
cool.
the curriculum for that, and even the exam. So if you don't like some of the questions, just send me a message and fix it. What else? What else do I do? Well, yeah, I work on film projects, documentaries, and commercials and music videos and all that. And I like what my favorite thing to do is to develop workflows, which is also something I do a lot professionally. So companies or production like companies will come to either me or to Blackmagic in general and ask, we're about to shoot a film, like what's the best way to set ourselves up with, this type of equipment and, for recording and this type for monitoring. And I think it's quite fun to kind of go through the entire signal flow and figure out like how we can preserve the integrity of the signal from start to
Oh
finish.
yeah.
So that's the thing I'm most passionate talking about, I guess, and yeah,
Wow.
solving.
Man, that's so cool. So I mean, you do all kinds of stuff. I mean, from color to compositing to I'm really interested in this kind of workflow consulting and everything. So like you help, I mean, movies and productions and stuff figure out how the heck to do the things that they want to do.
Yeah, and I guess it's like I always have to remind myself that it's the things that I spend a lot of time like reading about and figuring out, stress testing. Most other people are not doing because it's not their job to do it. Obviously, like a
Mm,
director, nowadays, like directors will know editing programs, producers will know Photoshop. Like everything is taught in like film schools and media schools.
yeah.
But when it comes to like really the nitty gritty, like the how codecs operate, like
Mm,
file containers, color management is another one. Even a lot of colorists struggle with color management. So I figured like since I have this niche, like I may as well kind of share it with people and talk about it as much as possible.
yeah.
And yeah, it's just a fun part of the job. People come to me and I'm like, oh, I know like off the top of my head what the solution to their problem already is, so it's kind of like, yeah, it's like an empowering feeling.
That's so cool. So how did you kind of get into being a consultant for that kind of stuff? Did it just kind of start happening or how did that work?
Yeah, kind of like it just, yeah, it just started happening, especially through Black Magic themselves. So, if like Disney or DreamWorks or like large companies like that, need help, they will usually consult the creators of a software or, hardware. And when they went to Blackmagic, they kind of pinged it to me and said, "Hey, do you want to go to like fly to Atlanta and look at this project for a few weeks?" And yeah, this
Wow.
that kind of it's
So
pretty
what's
cool.
okay, so because I know I know of a couple of projects you've worked on and stuff. Like what was that like being kind of flown out to some place to be their workflow consultant?
It's really wild. Like it was, I didn't really, I couldn't figure out why I was there, like why me. Uh, but it was really fun. Yeah, it's kind of like it's a really wild feeling to go from only thinking of something like Disney as this massive entity that I have consumed my whole life. Like
Mm,
not just as like as a child, but even like nowadays, everything is Disney. Like all the Star Wars, properties are Disney and stuff like that.
Yeah.
To suddenly sending casual emails to someone with an at Disney email account, and I'm just kind of sitting there going like, huh, I'm just doing this. Like this is just Tuesday for me, like that's pretty wild. It's crazy
Wow.
how quickly these things can happen. Yeah. And
That's nuts. That's nuts. Oh. Well, that's such a cool opportunity, and what a neat way to use your expertise and your just really deep nerdiness to help so many people in the world enjoy things that, I mean, it's like not necessarily things that you're directly making,
mm,
but you're making it possible for other people to make stuff. And man, I just, that gets me going, man. That's so cool.
it is pretty cool. Like I can't deny it.
Yeah.
And I do like being like very much in the background, like there's people who are behind the camera, obviously the people shooting it. I'm like behind those people still. I'm like in the
Mm.
back room just like figuring out the settings and parameters. So that's really
You're
cool.
like helping them figure out what button to push before they push it and then hand it to somebody else. That's
Yeah.
so cool. So cool. Well, yeah, I'm really excited to have you out for ResolveCon, which
Yes.
is going to happen just in a couple weeks here. Actually, we're
Wow.
we're leaving to go up there to set up in 2 weeks. So that's, man, so exciting. So you're going to be talking about, what are you going to be talking about at ResolveCon?
Yeah. Earlier this year, I worked on a documentary, like a restoration project, and I wanted to present it as a case study because there's actually a lot of things I learned about the restoration process, a lot of new tools a lot of cool tools that I sort of discovered and fine tuned while I was doing it. So I really want to show that off. Yeah, it's pretty neat. So
Yeah.
I don't know how much more detail I should go into. I think I should leave it as a
Yeah, you guys will
surprise.
just you're just gonna have to see. All right. So, is there a way to see ResolveCon live? Yes, it's going to be live, just like this on my channel. So if you're watching this, you have the ability to watch the main presentations of ResolveCon live. We do have a few more spots if you want to come in person. I know it's probably last minute at this point, but if you can get a ticket to fly to Portland, Oregon, in the United States, please come and hang out with us because we would love to see your face and hang out and shake hands with you and help you with your projects and everything.
Sorry, I thought
I like the mind
I'd
meld. That was
accommodate with
great.
visuals.
That
I'm
was
not
that
sure
was
why
good.
why helping with projects involved like a
Yeah,
shoveling
that's
action.
it's shoveling. You know how everybody does a little bit of shoveling with their
You
with
got
their
it.
movie production. Yeah. So Daria is going to be there along with a lot of the other people that we've had on these streams for the last few weeks. Some of the most talented, wonderful, amazing people I've met in internet land, and very, very excited to hang out with you guys. So really cool. So yeah, if you want to check that out, it's resolvecon.com, and you can get your in-person tickets. You can also uh, sign up for the live stream. We are doing a ton of giveaways. I don't know if you guys saw the video I put out a few days ago. We're giving away over $44,000 of giveaway stuff, like of equipment and software and hardware and camera and like all this stuff. It's nuts, man. Like I don't even. It's unbelievable. So yeah, very exciting. So Daria, let's get into, because I know you have a couple of little workflow hacks, little fancy little things to show us today, and I'm excited to get into that because I'm always amazed at the random little things you come up with that I'm just like, dang, that's a really smart idea. So I'm ready for that.
All right, I do actually have something to show off. Shall we
Oh well,
do
that's good.
a screen share
I didn't
test?
say all that stuff, and you're like, I don't know what you mean. Thank
Got
you.
nothing.
I feel terrible now.
Shall we do a screen share test to make sure everyone can see what I'm
Yeah,
seeing?
let's see that. Our screen share was acting kind of strange earlier, so hopefully you guys can see it and it's not awful. Um, every once in a while, the technology hates us, but
I wonder if window might be a better option than entire screen. Let me try that. Share.
try it out. Let's see.
How does that look? Does that look all
All
right?
right, you guys are gonna have to tell me because my monitor is like a different size today, I guess.
Okay.
Looks good? Okay, sweet.
It's looking all right, I think,
Good.
for some
What's
people.
up, Jake
Okay,
Wish? Good to see you.
wonderful.
All right.
Right. Sorry, Casey, I'm moving you off to the side of the screen, so I'm gonna
Oh,
look that way when
that's
I need to
okay.
talk to you.
I I guess that's
Uh,
okay.
I am also gonna be looking at my notes here, but they're pretty brief. So for the most part, I'm looking here. So color grading, we love it, right? It is so exciting. You jump into this page and there's all these color wheels and curves, and it's all exciting. Let me turn up the waveforms as well. Just like so much cool stuff, so much potential there, in the pixels.
Yeah, just raw
Well, I'm a
potential.
lot of potential. Well, I'm not going to touch that today because I want to talk about workflow. It is
You
nice.
like this? Well, too bad.
Too bad. I like it just gray and drab and completely dry. And specifically, I want to talk about the media management tool, which I think is fairly underutilized. I don't hear that many
Ooh,
people talking about it
yeah, I think
um,
you're right.
as much as there should be. And I use it all the time because it allows us to do a lot of things that we can't do using either the deliver page or the quick export. So what I'd like to do is quickly take you through the tool and its interface in case this is your first time hearing about it. And then I also want to go over some of like the major advantages that it gives you and even a few special like tips that you might not have known about even if you were using it. So let's do it.
Oh,
Let's
but
dive into it.
all right. Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So the way we access this tool is by going to the file menu at the top and choosing media management. All right. So we get this little
Ooh, that
floating
doesn't pop
interface.
up. We can't see that because of the
Oh
window
no.
thing.
I wonder if, okay, wait, no problem. I'm just going to share what sorry, I'm going to change what I'm sharing. So let's stop that.
Okay.
Look at this problem solving on the fly, folks. This is how we do it. Like so. Does that work? Share it. Now you can see me and you, maybe. Can you see this? Yes, you can see it now.
Yes. Look at that.
All right, get it. Okay, so let me try that again. So file menu at the top, media
Mhm.
management. This is where you're going to access this interface and it will come up as a floating window. All
Nice.
right, so the best way to summarize what this tool does is it makes copies or transcodes of your media to varying degrees, right, based on the sort of the breadth that you want to work on. So at the very top, we have 3 tabs. You can decide to copy all the media in your entire project, all the media in a timeline or several timelines, or
Mhm.
certain clips that you may have selected. So that's your 3 modes. You decide what you're trying to copy and what you're trying to accomplish. And underneath that, you have, again, 2 options to either make an exact duplicate of that clip, right? So that means that there will be no compression applied, no encoding or decoding, just the original video file, but trimmed to some extent.
Mhm.
Or you can use it for transcoding, which is compressing it, right? So you're making sort of an alternative version of your video file. Usually we transcode for the benefit of creating smaller video files so that we can edit with them and keep them light on the processor so that we can scrub through them and play them back without lag. All right, so essentially what I'm describing are proxies, and we have several proxy modes in DaVinci Resolve already, so I'm not even going to focus on that. All right, beneath these 2 options, you also have just your general deliver page settings. So a destination, of course, and you'll see that when we start to transcode, you also have like the video and audio tabs, which are essentially almost identical to the ones that we get in the deliver page. So a lot of
Yeah, looks very
functionality
similar.
in this tool. Yeah. So there's like not that much new to teach. Like once you understand what's happening at the top, you more or less know how to use this tool. When you go to the settings, there's a few other parameters that allow you to fine tune what you're outputting. So let's start off with tip number 1. You can use media management to back up a project using only the media that was used in the final timeline. All right, so think about what that means, the implication. Usually, if we're trying to back up an entire project, right? So we refer to this as archiving, perhaps at the very end of your editing and deliverable process.
Mhm.
You just want to save like a well packaged archived folder that you can just put away somewhere. And if months or years down the line, you need to return to that project, there's like a very easy folder that you can access and restore the whole thing, right? So that's
Yeah.
called an archive file. You right click in your project manager on a thumbnail, and you can choose to export a project archive. So these are wonderful. By the way, I use them all the time whenever
Me too.
possible. Yeah. I ask clients to send me their projects as archives because that means I will have to do zero conforming when I import to their media and timelines,
Mm.
and I can just start grading on day one. So love these. The only downside is that the archive will include absolutely everything that was in the project, even if it did not make it to the final cut, right?
Mm.
So this is going to be all of the outtakes that the crew would have recorded, you know, the pre-roll, the post-roll, all the deleted scenes. So pretty wonderful overall, but it also tends to be a little bit bloated if you are just focusing on like the timeline that you need. Or I say timeline, but it could be timelines. You know, there could be several versions of your edit.
Yeah.
So one of the benefits of media management is that, let's say I do want to back up my entire project and I do want to copy the media, right? So keep the originals. Instead of choosing all media, which is what the archive is doing, I could just choose used media. So then anything that does not appear in at least one of the timelines is just not going to be included in this export.
Mm.
And in my case, you can see that it makes a small change. So if I look at all media and I looked at used, actually, you know, in my case, I am seeing the same size because I remember I made a master timeline for this project. Let me just delete that. I'll bring it back if I need to. Let's try that again. Media management. There we go. And now you can see a difference. All right. So by copying all media, the file size will be 7699 gigabytes. By only focusing on used media, right, it's a small change, granted, it's only a couple of gigs that it reduces it by, but this is a very short project, right? Most of the
Sure. Yeah.
takes, yeah, most of the takes ended up in the final cut. But if you're working on something substantially longer, like a feature, or probably more importantly, if you're working on like a documentary, right,
Yeah.
the shooting ratio for a documentary can be something like 1 to 10 or 1 to 20. So you could have loads of unused media that you maybe just don't want to back up, you know, on like a smaller backup project. Of course, the downside is that if you wanted to switch like some of your, I don't know, like your B-roll or your cutaways around, you'll no longer have access to like the remainder of your clips. So it really is contingent on what you're trying to achieve. But
Sure.
in my case, yeah, if I was trying to do like an alternative DRA in which I'm only exporting clips that were used in the edits, this is a really good way of doing that. Entire project, copy, and only used media. All right. Now, if I wanted to further reduce the size of this exported project, I can also choose to trim the media, right? So that I'm not including all of like the pre-roll in a single take or the post-roll. So I can click used media and trim. So usually we keep at least 12 frame handles because then that allows us to apply 1 second transitions on our clips. But
Mm.
24 is also pretty safe. And what that does is it absolutely plummets the size down, right? Because now we don't have 10 seconds of pre-roll and we don't have potentially like another 30 seconds of the actors continuing with the scene in a master take. You know, we then cut to like the other angles. So that can also substantially reduce the size of your file, again, while retaining the original media format, right? So it's
Mm.
extremely
Yeah.
high quality. It's like a DRA, but just without all the bloat, not the fluff. I should point out at this stage that this will not be generating the same folder structure as a DRA, right? Which usually comes with like a project file.
Mm.
When you use media management, you are only copying the media itself into the location that you specify.
Oh,
So
okay.
yeah, make sure that afterwards you do actually, you know, go back into the project manager and also export the project file itself. Or, you know, again, if you have like 1,000 timelines, which we have had in previous projects, you could just export the timeline itself, the DRT, like so.
Yeah.
And when you import that, you can relink it to your trimmed media and then start like either your grading process or compositing, whatever you were trying to do that day. So that was that just point one? One, I feel like I covered so much stuff, but actually,
Yeah, that's interesting. So when you do this export project here, or the entire project, um, all it's doing is copying the media over, right? It's
yeah,
not packaging it up like a DRA.
no.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's not retaining any like metadata, which a DRA would. So of course, that's like one of the many advantages of using like the DaVinci Resolve formats, the
Mm,
timelines, projects, and archives, is that like if I did any color grading or compositing, all of that would travel. This is just the media.
yeah.
So keep that in mind. All right, so since I'm talking about trimming, that takes me to my point number two, in that I am able to make trimmed copies of media that might not even be supported by the render settings in the deliver page, right? So what I'm talking about specifically is raw formats, right?
Mm,
When you're trying to, let's say you have like a 5-minute take on a raw camera in a raw format, and you need to just snip like 10 seconds out of that because that's the actual portion of the take that you need.
yeah.
There's not really a lot of applications that will trim raw, right? If I go to the deliver page, there are no raw formats listed, right? So I don't
Yeah.
have, I was going to say, I don't have BRAW, I don't have RED, any of the Alexa formats. But if I use media management, it actually will copy the file with the trim as the original format. That's probably one of my favorite things because when I make training materials, uh, I think students prefer to learn with raw media because they could see like the full potential, like when it comes to color grading, see how the
Sure.
raw tools operate. And just preparing the projects via the deliver page limits me a bit. I can't really, you know, render files that way. And I also can't share the original red takes because again, like even if they're 30 seconds long, they're going to be gigabytes in size. And
Yeah,
usually
yeah.
like I'm I'm motivated to keep the file sizes small. So this is such an elegant solution is just to make a selection. So let me see if I have like a particularly long clip. I just want to prove to you that this works. Let's see. If I go to my footage and I think I just have like a super long take that begins with a clapper. That's good. I'm going to create a new timeline. Create it. Okay. So how long is this? It's about 48 seconds. And if I check it out in my metadata, you can see that it's red.
Hmm.
Anything else? Yeah, just keep it that way. And then I am going to trim it as I would during an edit. And it'll be obvious that this is trimmed because it doesn't start with a clapper. Let's see if I can get like any motion in here, any people. Maybe a couple there. Okay. So now what I can do is go back into my media management. And I don't only have to do this via the entire project. I can also do it via clips. But again, copy is what you need. Transcode is the one that's going to take you into all of those video formats from the
Yeah.
render page. Copy is what you want. So I'm going to send it to my media management tool on my clip. And yeah, this is the important one. Use media and trim keeping. I'll talk about this in a second. But yeah, we'll trim the media. Always like to keep my handles. And you can see that the size is going to be substantially smaller from the
Oh,
original.
yeah.
So now I can click start. It shouldn't take too long. Whoop, actually, blink and you miss it, right?
Yeah.
Uh, let's see. Do I have anything in miscellaneous? Nope, that's an empty bin. Where did I place this on my desktop? Media management. Where did it end up? I think it's here. Okay, still a red format. This time it's 7 seconds long and a completely usable red clip.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't know you could do that. That's really cool.
I love it.
That's really
I
cool.
knew that if I could just show you one thing today,
Yeah.
that still have access to my camera raw palette, right? So it is legitimately like a red clip. It's non-compressed.
That's really neat.
And it's
And
the
so,
only,
okay, so when
oh
you
yeah.
export this as a trimmed clip, can you also export the timeline referencing that clip? Or like, how does that work? Because it has handles and stuff, and if you just brought it in, it's not going to be the same timing. You don't know what I'm asking?
You are asking how it's going to relink if it's got different metadata.
Yeah.
And it will actually retain the original start and end time code of the clip. So even though the duration of the clip is different, because of the embedded time code, it will still correctly launch within, like, relink within a timeline that you're bringing in.
So if you have a timeline that's linked to the full clip and you
Mhm.
just like go and replace media with that, like relink it, then it'll just work.
Yeah, because of
That's
this
awesome.
time code. If the time code was reset to like 000, then obviously yeah, it wouldn't relink.
Yeah.
But because it retains this data, it'll be just fine. So what is it?
Oh,
A17. This one, yeah, you can see the start and end time code, though not identical to the one that we just rendered. It is referring to the same kind of like,
yeah, the same section. It's within it.
exactly. Section is a good way to describe it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So these will be the times in the metadata of the timeline. So it will connect based on that.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Man, I'm definitely going to start using that because I've been definitely just been transcoding things and just accepting like, well, I'm not going to give people the raw, you know, and most of the time it's fine, but it's nice to have that option.
I think so. All right. Anything else? While I'm still on tip number 2, are we good for time? Yeah, we're great for time. I'm going to jump back in here. I also want to point out this other option here, consolidate multiple edit segments into one file. What this means is that if you have multiple takes, or sorry, multiple cuts from a single take,
Hmm.
then instead of rendering all of those out as individual files, right? So when you're copying, it will instead just render out the entire file to its sort of maximum duration. And the
Oh,
thing
okay.
behind it is that number one is you might have quite a bit of overlap, right? So let's say you've got like B-roll that you're capturing, like let's say you're doing a wedding video, right? And you're just walking around, you're capturing guests and there's people talking and just like the location. You might go in and create a bunch of like either subclips or just go back and forth, placing new in and out points on that one clip. And there might be overlap, so then it's a bit redundant to have to constantly make a copy of the same like section of frames. Not to
Yeah.
mention you might want to like retrim some of that data, or maybe go to a different like position in that long take. So it just simplifies the output a bit by only rendering one file that all those takes are derived from.
Yeah. Yeah, that's smart. That makes sense.
All right, so I think it's a pretty cool feature.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? All right. Let's go to tip number 3. When it comes to the transcode mode, I did mention that virtually all, I say almost all, not all of them, but like the majority of formats are supported. So if you are doing something like MXF dailies, for example, if you're like an avid editor and you're used to rendering proxies in MXF, you can do that from right inside here, not a problem. And
Hmm.
again, you get to be more selective with the type of media that you're rendering out. So let's say you've got like a master timeline, and this is actually what I deleted a second ago. I'll show you how to make a master timeline. This is all of my footage in this project. So it's a short film. There's only this many clips, 35 clips according to the metadata panel. If I generate a new timeline, and this can be anywhere, by the way, so just right click, create new timeline. I always make a master timeline in every project I work on for a variety of reasons. And the trick is just to deselect empty timeline in the new timeline dialog window. And what's going to happen is this timeline will now be populated with all the clips that were captured and ingested into this project based on date of capture. All right, so if I click create, all right, I'm going to zoom out of this timeline. You can see that every single clip has been lined up to its full duration, right? So it's ignoring any like trim data, any in and out points that you may have placed. And yeah, and they're all sequential. They're all in order, in the order that they were captured, barring like any deleted clips, which I think there are. So there's a lot of benefits to master timelines. It allows us to create dailies for like producers. I mean, there's a lot of like more efficient ways of generating proxies in DaVinci Resolve nowadays, right? You do have like a proxy just control in the contextual menu. So
Hmm.
generate proxy media like so. There's even like a standalone app that comes with DaVinci Resolve that is just a proxy generator that runs in the background. But like I said, there's a variety of reasons why you might want to render something out of a timeline instead.
Mm.
Uh, with a master timeline, you can start grading your media before an edit is even compiled, and then transfer those grades after the editor sends you an XML, for example.
Hmm.
Where was I going with this? Well, let's say you wanted to generate proxies, but you didn't want to be limited to the standards that DaVinci Resolve offers you. Because right now, if I go into my master settings, you can see my proxy media format pretty much restricts me to intermediate formats like DNX or ProRes if I was on a Mac. There's also like a couple of like H.264 and 5. With the standalone app, there's an even bigger limit on the formats that you can use for generating your proxies. So that's, I think, a great benefit of media management is that you can still do the exact same thing as you can using like the proxy tools,
Hmm.
except you have the full range of tools, or sorry, codecs and containers at your disposal. So like I said, MXF is a very popular one among like avid editors. Or let's say I was delivering to like a VFX house. I could maybe assemble some clips that I know need compositing, right? VFX,
Mm.
and I could choose EXR as my video format, which is a common standard that we use, and start the process that way.
Wow.
So yeah, transcode based on a timeline. So yeah, I think that's quite convenient to just sort of expands our workflow options or solutions.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's funny how many different ways there are to do kind of the same thing and the different advantages and everything, which you wouldn't know unless you opened it up and played with it, or somebody showed you. That's wild.
So true. A lot of like this stuff for me is like residual almost, like, and I think that's how I hope it works for other people. When you see a tool demonstrated, you might think like, huh, that's interesting. Like I don't need it right now. I don't need it for this project, but I'm just going to file this like in the back of my mind somewhere as a
Yeah.
maybe. And then this happens so often where like, 3 years down the line, somebody will bring up a problem and I'll be like sitting there and I'm like, huh, how can we make that more efficient? And then suddenly like, bing, I just remember, I'm like, oh, wait a second, wasn't there this thing once that, so yeah, this is one of those types of tools.
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah.
so speaking, oh, sorry, Casey, I keep cutting you off, I feel.
No, you're not. I'm just reacting. I think it's great. So go
I
continue.
like it that I feel like I've got like a hype man, in the back. Like every time I say something, I just hear you going
Yes.
like, yeah.
Oh, yeah, exactly. Are you listening to this? Workflow.
Workflow's the best. So actually I wanted to launch into my fourth tip right off the back of this one. I was looking at, entire projects and timelines, but let's say I have like just like one or two clips on my timeline that I need to export as the XRs for my compositor.
Mm.
Instead of making like a dedicated timeline or something like that, I might prefer to just make a selection, right? So let me go back to like an actual edited cut. And it doesn't really matter what it looks like, but maybe I'm like, it's these exteriors, like this clip and this clip of the cars, like maybe they have to, I don't know, take out the license plates. That's a pretty common thing we do. I've selected two clips over here, and I can now go into media management, where else, of course. And when I go into my clip section, I now reveal a new menu, which is not always present, right? This only
Mm.
appears if you have something selected either in a timeline or in the media pool. But now that I've got selected timeline clips, I can still do all the same things in terms of transcoding them entirely or by trimming clips. Can you make copies as well? Yeah, you can also make copies of them based on the selection that you've just made and retain like the folder structure that they came in, which is pretty handy once you're like swapping the clips out
Mm.
when you get your renders back from the compositor. So I just like that the media management tool, it's not just like just living there in the back, like as this almost like a legacy tool. It is pretty hip. Like it connects to your project based on like how you're interacting with it. Making selections will impact the way that this tool works.
Wow. Yeah, I would have never known that. That's cool.
So I think yeah, it's quite nice because, like I said, like I do all sorts of like turnovers and deliverables, And if I just need to really quickly like bump out these two clips, uh, this is faster than going to the deliver page, and it's also more, you have more control than the quick export, which quick export is sort of designed for exactly this type of workflow where you're trying to really quickly render out a timeline or a clip for, you know, monitoring purposes like preview. But this does not give you like these high-end workflows, whereas media management does.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's pretty cool. And my final tip we are approaching, it has to do with this section at the bottom of the window, which you've probably noticed. It is giving us a readout of how large our render is going to be at any given time. Now I'm going to take you over to the deliver page to illustrate why this is so precious to me. Because when I try to check out how much, like how large a file is going to be at the end of the render,
Mm.
for some reason, we never get this in actual figures in terms of like megabytes or gigabytes. It doesn't even tell you in terms of like percentage of your drive space. It tells you how much space will be left after the render, which is like really wild to me that it's done this way.
Yeah.
Is there maybe like in the
I mean,
option?
I mean, if you're really concerned about how much drive space you have, I mean, I guess that's a I guess that's
I
an issue.
I will not I will not accept the slander. There we go. I've changed it to the F. Actually, all my drives are crazy full. I apologize. But there, okay, we got 81 currently. So this will take up 5% of my drive F. So that doesn't really tell me how large the file size is going to be. And where this gets really problematic is oftentimes your deliverables can be file size specific, right? So if
Mhm.
you're delivering to a festival, they will probably have like an online submission system, and there will be like a request, you know, like you have to keep this under, you know, 2 GB, for example.
Mm.
This doesn't tell you what you're getting. So you're going to end up having to do like loads of renders, you know, to try to get it right under that cap because you don't, you know, crush the quality of your footage too much, you know, in the interest of getting like too far under those 2 gigs. So media management comes to the rescue once again because it does tell you the size of your project. And let's see, where do I want to send this? Is this my final project? Yeah, Final Cut. So I'm going to be select timelines, select Final Cut. This will be a transcode, so I'm not retaining the raw media. And I'm going to go into my video settings, and I'm just going to use like a very generic submission standard. So
Mm.
this will be QuickTime H.264. And let's see, a little bit too many settings to see. Oh, no, I can still see them in the audio tab. But this, yeah, just where you can see the settings, it's cutting off at the bottom of my screen. What else do I need to do? I think it's pretty good. If I look in my audio, it's 169, so I am making my hypothetical limit. But I figured, like, hey, if I've got a limit of 2 gigs, I may as well bump up the quality of the video, right? So then I'll
Sure,
have
yeah.
less compression artifacts, less like glitching in the motion of the footage. So to increase my footage quality, number one is I can increase the amount of keyframes that I generate, which I think by default is 30 per 30 frames. So keyframes is a reference to like iframes when we're doing like temporal compression or like H.264 formats. And this is basically like a fresh frame that's grabbed off your footage from which all the other frames are generated. So like your
Mm.
P frames, your predictive frames. But if you don't generate these too often, you're going to see this artifact of um, there being like motion in your footage, but the pixels from the previous scene are still in place. So you've probably seen this like glitch a lot. People almost use it for like aesthetic purposes nowadays, but it is definitely like a technical glitch that we don't want. I could select that and bump it up to like 15 or 5. It depends on how much motion there is in your footage. So if you got like, I don't know, if you're like running through a beach and there's pebbles everywhere, you probably want to grab a lot of iframes. But if you're just shooting like a conference, you could probably leave this pretty high and it won't matter too much. So that's so far so good. And then of course the other contributor to quality is going to be your data rate, right? So how much data is actually being recorded in every frame of your footage. And by default, the setting is set to like these kind of wishy-washy terms like best or high or medium, which doesn't give you any hard values. And generally, these work really well, for visual output, for the visual quality. But I prefer to have this type of control. Sorry, I just offset my keyframes, where I can manually set up my data rate. So the higher this number, it means the more data is going to be going into every frame of your footage, or not even every frame, but rather every second. It's how it's calculated. And again, if I jump into my next menu, you can see currently, if I leave this at 80,000 kilobits, we're going to be generating a 6 GB file. All right, so remember our limit. We're sending this to Sundance, needs to be under 2 GB. So it needs to be at least like a third, right, of the size that we have at the moment. So what's a third of 80? Maths.
Ah,
So I'm going to say 40,000.
this is
Well, it's going to
20.
half it at least, right? So I'll come
3.
back to the audio tab, and it might take a second. Oh, there it is. So 312. So exactly as I said, right? Halved
Yeah.
the values. So we need like two, so probably a third of that. So I am just going to type in 34,000 kilobits. Go back to the audio tab. Give it a second. It's like 267. I thought that would work for sure. But yeah, if anyone in the chat wants to do the maths, it's funny. I could have sworn
Sure,
this would have worked.
somebody's just like, these guys can't
Uh,
math at all. It's not
I could have.
23.
I
Wait a
think I
minute.
tried this on a different timeline, and I probably should have checked it on this one as well. But oh, there we go, 191. So that's
There you
pretty
go.
close. So that's kind of the idea, is that I've taken it to its highest possible setting without
Mm.
going overboard. So that submission website will definitely be happy to accept this to 195. Nice, that's clean. Probably leave it at that. And yeah, and everything else, stuff like audio doesn't contribute as much to the size. It does impact it, but it's not too bad. So anything else I want to say? Yeah. Oh, so file size. The reason why I might not want to render my actual timeline from media management is because it's not a background process, right? So I'm going to end up having to like leave this window hanging in place and like do something else, for the next few minutes while the render takes place. I do prefer the overall behavior of the deliver page. I like the render queue. So, because it allows me to kind of put in multiple jobs and then
Yeah.
render them all out at once, which I can't do with media management. But that's fine because I already figured out the most important thing, right? I know the data rate that I want to be using and my quality parameter, 24,500, and everything else. So now that I've figured this out, I've figured the calculation, I can just cancel and go back to the deliver page and set up my actual render because the settings are all the same.
Yeah, that's an
24,500.
interesting idea. It's like, and it's funny because that could just be helped by giving us the number, the size. I'm sure
Yes.
that's in the works.
All right, so there we go. There's my Sundance, and maybe I had other deliverables for different festivals, so they might have different like restrictions. I might also be outputting with various tags, like for people who might be playing it back on like QuickTime. There's a variety of reasons why you might want to have multiple jobs, maybe different resolutions, so I've got my HD deliverable, but I might also have like my 2K, 4K, etc.
Yeah.
So job. And then when they're all set up, set render, and then just take a break for the next however long, 20 minutes, an hour. Oh, hang on, let me stop sharing. And then you're good to go. So I think, yeah, you can kind of like combine. Like I'm never trying to like stop people from using any one tool or piece of equipment. I'm more about like expanding your options, and you being
Yeah.
able to say like, this is going to be more efficient next time.
Yeah, I mean, and knowing that all of those features are there, I mean, it can be perfect for one workflow and just make no sense for another one. So being able to understand like, wow, I can use media management to figure out the size of something when like, you know, for a lot of things, I mean, things that I do most of the time, I'm like, I don't really care that much about what the size is, I'm just gonna let it upload for half a day or whatever. But for some things it's really important.
Oh yeah.
Some things it's like I'm gonna make 20 different versions of it, and so I need to use the render queue for that. And sometimes it's just I just need to render out this one little little
Mhm.
clip, and that's a lot faster with the media management. So really cool. Yeah, this is such good stuff, man. This is the like in the weeds kind of things that like when maybe when you're first starting out, it's not that big a deal, but then after you work for a little bit with these tools, you're just like, gosh, man, I just want to be able to do this simple thing,
Mhm.
and man, a lot of really cool techniques to be able to do those kind of things, man. So good.
I think so. And thank you.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so Daria, I know it's kind of it's in the evening for you, isn't it? Right now, or is it
It
not?
is. It's
I don't know how time
almost
zones
7
work.
p.m. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, in London. Yeah.
Well, I want to let you go and be respectful, but thank you so much for hanging with us. Thank you for sharing these tips. You're wonderful. So really appreciate it, and I'm excited to have you out for ResolveCon. And guys, thank you. Show some love in the chat for Daria. Thank you for being here, everybody. Uh, there's a lot of people saying really good stuff in the chat, and very thankful. So very
Yeah, I'm trying
awesome.
to skim it. There's a lot of conversations taking place.
Yeah, it is.
Um, oh, it's wonderful. Thank you, everyone. And I am so looking forward to ResolveCon. Uh, last year, I was a giant floating head. This year, the intention is to make it all the way to the airport
Was
and out.
so sad, man. So sad.
No one saw
Ugh,
it coming. I had the tickets and everything. I just, yeah,
ugh.
didn't work out that way. But no, this year I will be there physically. I'll be just as small as everyone else on that stage, sitting
You won't
alongside
be.
Darren Moston and
Oh, that's great. Yeah, well, it's going to be great, guys. Again, if you want to hear more from Daria, there's a lot of. Well, actually, you could tell us
oh.
any other places people could learn from you there, Daria.
Uh, yeah, I don't usually have much to like to pitch. I'm usually just like sneak off back into the shadows when I'm done.
Hide
These
in
like
my hole, working on the next book.
yeah, these conversations. You know what? I'm gonna post something in the chat, but if you want to like attend Black Magic's official training courses, those are run
Oh
for
yeah.
free. They're run for free like all the time. Like we have semesters, so we rerun everything every like 3 or 4 months. All you have to do is email learning at blackmagicdesign.com. Yeah, type it in correctly. And just ask to be put on the mailing list, and they'll send you like all the current workshops. We have like 5-day workshops covering like all the books on our website, and most of them are run by the authors. So that's like Chris Roberts and Mary Plummer and myself. We also run it in multiple languages. We've got Spanish and Portuguese, and also like standalone workflows and stuff like color management and I don't know, like color matching
Yeah.
and yeah.
Excellent material. I've been through a lot of that myself, and it's always put together very well and very well presented. So, yeah,
Thank you.
that's awesome. Well, yeah, thank you so much for hanging with us. And again, Daria will be with us during ResolveCon. If you haven't got your tickets yet and you want to come and hang out with us, there's still spots to come and hang out with us in Portland, Oregon. And if that's not available to you, if you're like, oh man, I just can't make it out this year, we are going to be streaming the main presentations here on my YouTube channel in just a couple weeks. So very excited. Yeah, the email is learning at blackmagicdesign.com. Yep. All right. Hey guys, thank you for hanging with us. Thank you, Daria. This has been wonderful, and we'll catch you guys later.
Thanks for having me,
Bye.
Casey. Bye.